welcome to SSW TV, coming direct to you from NDC, Sydney. I'm here with Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hey, Adam, how's it going?
So tell me a little bit, who are you, and tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Nik Molnar. I am a web developer from Austin, Texas. Some people might know me from an open source project called Glimpse that I started about 6 years ago, and I love the web. I work at Microsoft.
Fantastic. So what's got you super excited at the moment?
So I kind of have two things right now that have me excited. There's a thing that I've been excited about for a long time and continue to be excited about, and that's web performance. I really like geeking out about making pages load faster, and you know, there's just another level of understanding that you have to really optimize performance, and so
Okay.
I kind of like the challenge there.
Yeah, awesome.
And then the other thing is, because I am such a web guy, I spent 20 years doing web development, I'm very excited about this idea of progressive web applications.
Nice.
And this is basically a set of technologies put together, like Service Worker and Manifest, which allow you to build a web application that is installable and basically has first-class citizenship,
maybe? Something like that.
On the operating system. So just like you could go to the App Store and install an app on your phone, no, you could just go to my application and it'll say, hey, this is an application. You can just go to my URL. They'll say, hey, this is an application. Do you want to install it? And that means I can do things like push notifications. It'll work offline.
No need for a store either.
No need for a store, although like Microsoft just announced that they're going to get into this game, and they will probably use Bing. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, and I know I work for Microsoft, but I don't know anything about this. They're probably going to use Bing, I assume, to find these applications and automatically put them in the store.
Wow.
So the people who are used to going to the store can still find my application that way.
Wow, that's great.
So I think that's the future of the web, right? There's been this battle where like it was the web, and then iPhone came out and smartphones, and then apps kind of started taking over, and I feel like this is the web fighting back finally.
That's great. So that means I don't need to learn a new technology. I don't need to learn, you know, Ionic or, you know, any of the native kind of things. I can actually build progressive
Native
applications
web.
in my web tech tools.
Yes.
And I'll get a much more app-like experience.
Yep, exactly.
Excellent. So how does that work? So that's going to work across desktop browsers as well as mobile browsers?
So the support right now is Chrome and Opera on Android.
Yep.
Firefox, Chrome, Opera on desktops.
Yep.
Edge is working on their support right now, so it'll be on Edge on Windows.
Yep.
So basically, everywhere. This is all the new browsers, right? So
Yep.
nobody running old browsers.
Yep.
The big thing that's missing right now is Safari, particularly on iOS. That's the last holdout. And so the web dev community is kind of pressuring and pushing Apple to implement, and they are favorable for it, but they have not said we're going to implement this.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So how close can I get with a progressive web app to being something like something that I'd install from the App Store?
So all of the features that you would want to use are basically available. I mean, there are some APIs that are not yet available, but like the big ones, right? Geolocation, access to the camera, access to offline storage, access to push notifications, that's all available now.
Awesome.
All right, so like if you want access to the user's address book, there's not an API for that yet. You know, there's some special case scenarios where your application might not work there, and you would need a native application installed to get access to those native APIs.
But it gets me a long way there.
To be honest with you, I don't know if I've built an app in the last 10 years where with just those technologies I listed wouldn't get me all the way.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the kind of work that I do. I don't typically interact with the user's address book in any way.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Wow, that's really exciting. And so does that cross over? How does that cross over into your other care, which is around performance? What are the performance of these progressive apps like?
Yeah, so I think the key word is it's a progressive app, right? And so when the web community uses that word, they mean like you start with a basic experience and you progressively make it better as the user's device and or browser allow it to be better, right?
Okay.
And so in the past, that might have meant like you don't use the geolocation API. Instead, you ask the user where they are, right? Type in the name of your city. Oh, but if the geolocation API is available, you make your app, you progressively enhance your app just to hit a button and now you get the lat long, right?
Awesome.
And so progressive web apps start their life as a web page. So it's all the same best practices and things that I've cared about in web performance for the last 6 years. It's the same. And then you hit this button and it's an app, right?
Awesome.
But it's still all the exact same best practices apply that any web developer's been doing for the last 20 years.
That's great. And there's so many responsive websites that we make that people go and they look great on a device, and they, especially on a tablet, they'll still work great. But the customer that we're dealing with says, but I want a button and I want to launch it and I want it to feel like an app. And this kind of, especially for a forms over data-y kind of enterprise app, that's really all they need. And so this would solve that problem really easily.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reality is JavaScript, particularly in the browsers that I mentioned already support this, is perfectly capable and fast, right? So there are, if you really care about making it feel like a native app, like you can have a splash screen, right? Just like when I load most of my apps, something will pop up while the app is showing up, right? Some developers are clever and they make that splash screen look like the shell of the app. Like Facebook was one of the first ones that was kind of famous for doing this. You would launch the app, and you would kind of see, like, there's supposed to be a user image here and there's supposed to be text here, but it was just gray boxes and gray stripes. It wasn't the actual text. And then the text would, like, fade in over the top of that.
Wow.
So you got the feeling. So you can do all of that kind of stuff with a progressive web app, which is some clever JavaScript and being careful. The other thing is, because you have access to the offline storage mechanism on the phone, the first time they connect, you can cache a bunch of data. So you're sitting in an elevator, they open up your app, you're offline, but you have the data that they last looked at. So you show them that almost instantly.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
while you wait on the network or wait to reconnect to the network, then you go and you get the new data.
Awesome.
So you have this very app-like experience where you're getting instant data, but then when network is there, it's just another progressive enhancement. Oh, hey, I have network, let's go get some data.
That's awesome. And so using that though, like the real challenge when building even native apps is that offline-online synchronization. Is there a story around that?
So progressive web apps don't have anything explicitly around storage. You're just using the standard storage mechanisms that are available. So for the most part, that means indexed DB in the browser.
Yep.
And so there are third-party libraries that you can use that do sync, if that's what you're into.
Yeah.
So one that I particularly like is called PouchDB with a P.
Yep.
And that is a JavaScript implementation of CouchDB with a C.
Yep.
On top of IndexedDB. And what makes CouchDB super powerful is it's kind of like Git in that there are, they don't call them commits, but you can think of it as a commit, and you can push data from one repo, one database to the other. And so literally you can store all of your data into this database using this API. It's very natural. Boom, all of a sudden you discover you have a connection, sync, and it just pushes everything up and pulls all the data down.
But then you've got to use a couch. I see. I've looked at that, but then you've got to use CouchDB
But then
on
you
the
got to use
server.
Couch, yeah. So that's just one of the libraries. So there's other libraries that work with other databases or that are database agnostic, but maybe you have to implement an API in a certain way.
But you like Couch, and you think Couch is worth spending some time on?
So I'll be honest with you, I like it. I started building it in the last application that I did. So I'm building an app that I called Soda Pops. I don't drink alcohol. Just for I don't like the taste.
Yep.
But I see all my friends using like Untapped or like there's Vivimo, which is like the same thing for wine. So I built one for craft soda.
That is a great idea.
So it's not quite launched yet, it's almost there, but I started the implementation with PouchDB, and it was super easy and I really liked it.
Awesome.
But I ran into some problems with Couch, I particularly around authentication. I didn't like the way that it handled authentication. I needed to do some custom things because of the Twitter and Facebook integration that I wanted to do, and maybe I'm just a dum-dum, but it didn't seem straightforward to me. And so what I ended up doing is using SQL Server, and SQL Server has change tracking, and so I built a little custom API, and I have to do the state management myself. It's probably 50 lines of code though, and now I'm doing the same.
I'd be interested to see that because that's kind of a that'd be
Yeah,
an interesting story to check out.
I'll show you the code.
That sounds brilliant. So, if I'm going to go into the progressive, if I'm going to go down the progressive app route, what's the one thing that I should be aware of? What's the biggest hurdle that I'm going to have to jump?
I have found thinking about the network as a progressive enhancement to be a real paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Right? Like you do web development,
Yeah.
I do web development. Our whole careers, we've assumed the network was there.
Yeah.
Maybe the best developers, right, or the most cautious developers, assume the network might be slow.
Yeah.
But we assume that it's there.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the whole idea of a progressive web app is throw that assumption away. Assume that it's not there.
Yeah.
How do you build your app? Oh, when it's there, bonus. Now what do you do with that bonus? And that really changes things. It changes your caching strategy. It changes how you think about like using any third-party services. Like, so for example, all of my users' avatars are rendered by Gravatar. And so if I'm offline, I don't have Gravatar, what do I show?
Yeah.
And so now I need a fallback solution. And so I ended up finding some Identicon library that would make a custom graphic automatically for every single user. And if you're offline, that's all you get. And when you go online, you get the Gravatar representation.
Yeah, interesting. That is a big paradigm shift.
Yeah, it's a big paradigm shift.
That's a great thing to highlight.
Yes.
Excellent. Look, that's been a really interesting introduction to progressive web apps, and we thank you very much for coming along, and thank you everyone for joining us for SSW TV.
No problem. High five.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, it's me, Scott Hanselman, here with Adam Kogan at NDC Sydney. We're hanging out. It's SSW Video. How are you, sir? That's how you do an intro. No, go ahead. I'll be right here, please.